Well, it's time to look at the international papers. No surprises here. Everyone talking about Egypt.
That's right, Cyril. At the risk of sounding predictable, Egypt splashed across the front pages all over the world. We're going to begin with International Herald Tribune, and what we see here is they're saying that Mohamed Morsi, just like his predecessor Hosni Mubarak, is finding out that the top priority for the military is itself. So what happens is that we see that the military is finding that the timing isn't right, basically to get rid of Mohamed Morsi. And the Muslim Brotherhood had been consolidating its power. There was anger on the streets. The economy was slumping. And the military said it's time to cut its losses. And we wonder why the military is so willing to cut deals with any leader that's in place. Well, it basically has these long ingrained benefits and advantages. They're sort of they have the best quality of life in Egypt, so they have their own social clubs, hotels, hospitals, parks, and this is built up after 6 decades of either direct or indirect rule. Many military men have grown rich off of government contracts, and now what's important to notice is that at the beginning, Morsi and the military got along well, they complemented each other, but once these internal crises mounted, once the anger was on the streets, there were fuel shortages, power cuts, and the economy plunged, the end for Morsi was near.
It seems that analysis gets consensus across the board that the military is essentially looking out for itself. So for the second time in 2.5 years, the military ousting a leader, but there is reluctance by some to call it a coup d'etat. How is this playing out in the press?
Well, that's right. Now, Robert Fisk at The Independent asked that very question. He says, when is a coup not a coup? And he says, well, it's when the U.S. decides not to call it one. Fisk says that the U.S. has several interests in Egypt that would prevent it from using this word, mostly if it's going to impose sanctions on a country that says committed a coup. Well, this country is the most important Arab nation currently at peace with Israel. Also at risk is if the Egyptian military and the U.S. find a way to disagree, Egypt could lose €1.5 billion a year of aid. So Fisk says one important effect of this is basically Bashar al-Assad could say, look, I'm a secular government being terrorized by Islamists that are trying to abuse the democratic process, and so it plays in the hand of Assad. Now, Fisk says under any other circumstance, when an army takes over, imprisons a democratically elected leader, and suspends the Constitution, there'd be no hesitation to call this a coup. And so despite this unplanned transition, the markets are showing confidence, which is unusual. So
up
there's
7%.
Indeed, indeed. So many people in the markets might have been fearing that there'd be a civil war. As you said, it's up 7%. Oil-rich Gulf countries were quick to welcome Egypt's new leader, but investors say this new technocratic government might find a way of uniting the country in a way that the Muslim Brotherhood could only polarize it.
Also, today in the press, a very interesting investigation in French daily Le Monde. There's a French version of Big Brother.
That's right. So we're going to look at the Huffington Post, its website. It says scandaleux, and that is indeed how many people are reacting to it here in France. It's basically the French government has been keeping tab of people's emails, text messages, recorded phone calls, and all this at a time when Europe's been heavily criticizing the United States for its PRISM program.
And France has its own version of the very same program.
Indeed, indeed. So it's a French body called the DGSE, and they've been collecting these records for years. Foreign Intelligence Service. Yes, indeed. And so Le Monde says, basically, this is squarely against the law.
Now, on a lighter note, I understand that you have an interesting map. What's that about?
Well, that's right. It's a map with names of places with their original meaning. So I'll show you here on the computer. One I quite like is Mexico, which is the navel of the moon. Now, we're here in France.
What are we looking at?
Right here. We got the navel of the moon, Mexico.
Right.
Okay, so we're here in France, and Spain and France are quite humorous as well. Spain is the land of rabbits, and France is the land of the frank ones. No surprise there. I will say one of my personal favorites is Madagascar. It means the end of the world. I spent a couple of years there, and it feels like it's too far away indeed.
All right, Will Hildebrand, thank you very much for the International Press Review. And coming up just after this short break, we'll be crossing live to our correspondent in Cairo to get all the latest about the situation in Egypt. And in Focus, we'll be talking about Nelson Mandela's health and the family dispute over his final resting place.
This week, we're down to earth in Brazil. In just a few minutes, thousands of genetically modified mosquitoes will be unleashed across the village of Jacobina. These nets hold what can only be described as an army of insects capable of destroying their own species. Is this high-tech response the best way to fight dengue, a tropical disease with no vaccine and no treatment?
Don't miss Down to Earth, today, 4:45 p.m. Paris time on France 24.